Gibson stares in disbelief at his name tag reading, "Second after Michael." The family reunion buzzes with laughter and conversation. His mother approaches, winking at his brother before announcing, "Only one golden child in this family." She presents Michael with keys to her vintage Corvette, while handing Gibson a rusty toolbox. "Start fixing your life," she smirks, not noticing the business call Gibson silences on his phone. Little does she know, in 2 days he'll be named CEO of the company he secretly owns with his college roommate. I stood frozen, the weight of the toolbox in my hands feeling heavier than its actual 20 pounds. The family reunion around me continued, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Again, just like it always did when my mother, Patricia Walker, decided to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. The name tag stuck to my chest might as well have been a brand. Second after Michael. Not Gibson Walker, or even Gibson Walker, marketing director. No, she had gone out of her way to make a special tag just for me. The blue Sharpie still looked fresh, like she'd written it minutes before I arrived. "Come on, Gibson, don't look so serious," my brother Michael said, jangling the keys to our grandmother's restored 1967 Corvette. "Mom's just having a little fun." A little fun, that's what they always called it. The jokes, the comparisons, the constant reminders that Michael was the sun, and I was, at best, a distant planet in our family solar system. "Yeah," I managed, setting the toolbox down on a nearby table. Hilarious. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Jake Thompson, my college roommate turned business partner. I silenced it without looking. Whatever crisis was happening at the office could wait. I'd spent 30 years living in Michael's shadow, and today was supposed to be different. Today was the day I'd finally tell my family the truth. "Gibson, honey, get your cousin Terry a beer, would you?" Mom called from across the lawn, where all the Walkers had gathered for the annual family reunion. This year, it doubled as Mom's 60th birthday celebration. Before I could respond, Aunt Tessa approached. Unlike my mother, Aunt Tessa had always treated me like I mattered. "I see Patricia's outdoing herself today," she said quietly, eyeing my name tag. "Want me to accidentally spill my wine on that atrocity?" I managed to smile. "Thanks, but that would just give her ammunition about how clumsy I am compared to Michael's grace under pressure." Aunt Tessa squeezed my arm. "You know, your grandfather would be proud of you, Gibson. He always said you had the sharpest mind in the family." Grandfather Walker had died when I was in college. He was the only one who saw something in me that my mother couldn't, or wouldn't. "Thanks, Aunt Tessa. That means a lot." I picked up the toolbox again. "I'm going to put this in my car. Don't let her get to you." Aunt Tessa called after me, but she already had. She always did. As I walked toward the parking area, I noticed Uncle Frank cornering Michael, probably talking about the good old days when they'd go fishing, while I stayed home to help your mother with chores. I spotted cousins Amy and Daniel by the grill, both wearing normal name tags with just their names. I reached my modest Honda Accord, popping the trunk to stow the toolbox. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Inside were papers, yellowed with age, showing loan documents. My grandfather's signature was at the bottom, along with my mother's. She had borrowed $75,000 from him to fund Michael's first business venture, a sports equipment store that went bankrupt within 18 months. I leafed through the papers, finding more loans, all for Michael, all unpaid. My phone buzzed again. Jake was calling for the 3rd time. Something was definitely wrong. "Jake, what's up?" I answered, my voice low. "Where are you?" "Harper's making moves. Word is, he's meeting with investors right now to try a hostile takeover before the board vote." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible." "We locked everything down. Someone leaked our strategy document. The whole board has it now." I leaned against my car, the family reunion forgotten. "I'll be there in 3 hours." "Stall him." "Gibson? Yeah? This feels like an inside job." I hung up, my mind racing. Only 5 people had access to that strategy document. Me, Jake, our CFO Allison, the board secretary, and the investor I'd brought in last year, the one Michael had introduced me to. I froze, the connection suddenly clear as day. The same sinking feeling I'd had so many times as a child returned, that moment of realizing I'd been played again. But this time, it wasn't just a stolen bicycle or a sabotaged science project. This was the company I'd built from nothing, the success I'd kept hidden from my family to avoid their interference and judgment. I slammed the trunk shut and turned to go back to the reunion, bumping directly into Michael. His usually confident smile faltered when he saw my expression. "Everything okay, bro?" he asked, glancing at my phone. "Important business?" I studied his face, searching for signs of betrayal. Did he know? Had he been working against me all this time? "Just a work thing," I replied carefully. "Nothing I can't handle." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Look, about the car and the toolbox. Mom went overboard. I told her to cool it with the golden child stuff. For just a moment, I considered telling him everything. About the company I'd built that was now worth over $200 million. About the CEO position I was in line for. About how for years I'd been living a double life to avoid Mother's manipulation. Instead, I just nodded and said, "It's fine. I'm used to it." "You shouldn't be," he replied, surprising me. "It's not right." Gibson. Before I could respond, Mother's voice rang out across the yard. "Michael, come show everyone your car." Michael gave me an apologetic look before jogging back toward the festivities. I followed slowly, my phone heavy in my pocket. The future of my company hanging in the balance while my family continued their celebration, completely unaware that the second-best son was fighting for control of an empire. As I watched Michael pop the hood of his new gift to appreciative oohs and ahs from the family, I made my decision. It was time to stop hiding. Time to take control. Time to show them all who Gibson Walker really was. The afternoon dragged on as Mother held court at the center table, a queen surrounded by her loyal subjects. I hung back, nursing a beer and fielding increasingly urgent texts from Jake. The situation at the company was deteriorating by the minute. "And then Michael closed that deal with the Hendersons," Mother was saying, her voice carrying across the yard. $2 million in one afternoon. A natural businessman, just like his father. My father, Thomas Walker, had left when I was 8, and Michael was 10. Mother always claimed he couldn't handle family responsibility, but the way she constantly compared me to him suggested a different story. "Tell them about your new project, Michael," she prodded, beaming with pride. Michael cleared his throat. "It's still in the early stages, but we're developing a new platform for small businesses to streamline their operations. Kind of a one-stop solution for inventory, payroll, marketing." I nearly choked on my beer. He was describing our company. Walker Tech Solutions provided exactly those services to over 3,000 clients nationwide. The company I'd built with Jake while working through college and beyond, saving every penny, sleeping on office floors, eating ramen for years until we finally broke through. "Sounds ambitious," Uncle Frank said. "You financing this yourself?" Michael glanced at Mother. "We've got some family investment to start, and we're meeting with bigger investors next week." Family investment. The loans from grandfather that were never repaid. My blood boiled as I realized what was happening. Michael was trying to compete directly with my company using family money, while simultaneously having his friend attempt a hostile takeover. Aunt Tessa appeared at my side. "You look like you're about to explode," she whispered. "Did you know about Michael's new business venture?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "Patricia's been talking about nothing else for weeks. How Michael's going to revolutionize the business world. Why?" "No reason," I muttered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mother announced, tapping her glass. "Dinner is served. We have a special seating arrangement. so please find your place cards. Of course, she had created a seating arrangement. And, of course, I found myself at the far end of the table, next to Cousin Terry's 7-year-old son who was currently picking his nose with impressive dedication. Mother sat at the head of the table with Michael to her right. His fiancée Heather was beside him, looking uncomfortable with the arrangement. I'd only met Heather twice, but she seemed nice enough, if a little overwhelmed by Mother's intensity. Before we eat, Mother said, I want to make a toast to my 2 sons. She paused dramatically. Michael, who makes me proud every day with his accomplishments and ambition. And Gibson, who tries his best. Silverware clinked awkwardly, as family members avoided eye contact. Aunt Tessa made a disgusted noise but said nothing. To my sons, Mother continued, raising her glass. 1 brilliant star, and one who, well, we love him anyway. Jesus, Patricia. Uncle Frank muttered. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Michael forced a laugh. Mom, come on. Gibson's doing fine. Of course he is, Mother replied. Still at that marketing job, right, Gibson? 5 years now? I took a long sip of water. Something like that. In reality, I hadn't worked for anyone else since Jake and I started our company 8 years ago. Mother had never bothered to ask details about my marketing job, and I'd never volunteered information. It was easier that way, free from her criticism or attempts to help by connecting me with Michael's business associates. Dinner progressed with Mother dominating the conversation, sharing stories of Michael's achievements while occasionally throwing comments my way that sounded supportive, but were laced with condescension. Gibson was always so good with those little computer games. Remember that, Michael? He'd spend hours in his room while you were out winning football championships. Those little computer games turned into a multi-million-dollar industry, Mom, Michael pointed out. Mother waved her hand dismissively. Well, Gibson found something steady at least. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. I caught Heather watching me with a curious expression. She leaned over to whisper something to Michael, who shook his head slightly in response. My phone buzzed again. Jake had sent a simple message. Harper's investor revealed. Richard Dalton. Richard Dalton. Michael's friend from business school. The same Richard who had been asking questions about our company structure last month at what was supposed to be a casual lunch. I stood abruptly. Excuse me, Gibson. We're having dinner, Mother scolded. Surely, whatever marketing emergency you have can wait. Actually, it can't, I replied. Walking away from the table, I heard her mutter, always so dramatic, as I left. Finding a quiet spot near the garden shed, I called Jake. Dalton's been working with Harper for months, Jake said without preamble. They've been quietly buying up shares whenever possible. They're still short of a controlling interest, but with the strategy document, they're convincing board members to vote against your CEO appointment. How much time do we have? Board meeting's still scheduled for Monday at 9. We need to lock down at least 3 more votes before then. I'm coming back tonight, I decided. This reunion can wait. One more thing, Jake said. Dalton's money is coming from a silent partner. We haven't identified who yet. A chill ran down my spine. Keep digging. I'll be at the office by midnight. As I hung up, I turned to find Heather standing nearby, clearly having overheard at least part of the conversation. Everything okay? She asked. Just work, I replied automatically. She hesitated, then said, Michael talks about you, you know. Not when your mom's around, but he does. He thinks you're smarter than everyone gives you credit for. That's a pretty low bar, I said more bitterly than I intended. Heather looked like she wanted to say more, but Michael appeared behind her. Mom's asking where you went, he told me, then noticed my expression. What's wrong? For a moment, I considered confronting him about Richard Dalton, about the takeover attempt, about the fact that his new business venture was a direct competitor to my company. Instead, I just shook my head. Nothing's wrong. Just tired of being the family disappointment for one night. Michael had the decency to look ashamed. I've told her to back off. She doesn't listen to me either, you know. Right. It must be really difficult being the golden child. That's not fair, Gibson. Isn't it? You got a vintage Corvette today. I got a rusty toolbox and public humiliation. Michael lowered his voice. Look, I don't control what Mom does, but you benefit from it. Always have. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled the loan documents from my pocket. Found these in the toolbox. Grandfather's loans to you. 75,000. 50,000. 120,000. Did you ever pay any of it back? Michael's face drained of color. Where did you get those? Like I said, in the toolbox. Mom's idea of a joke, I guess. The receipts of her devotion to you. Those loans were for my businesses, Michael said defensively. Your failed businesses. I corrected. And now you're starting another one? Let me guess. In direct competition with Walker Tech Solutions? Michael's expression shifted from defensive to shocked. How do you know about Walker Tech? I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. Because I founded it, Michael. With Jake Thompson from college. 8 years ago. We have 3,000 clients and offices in 4 states. Ring any bells? That's your company? Michael stammered. But Mom said, you work in marketing for some small firm. Mom assumed that. I never corrected her. Why wouldn't you tell us? I stared at him incredulously. Are you serious? Look at what happens whenever I achieve anything. It gets minimized, dismissed, or compared unfavorably to whatever you're doing. Michael ran a hand through his hair. Gibson, I had no idea. Save it, I snapped. And while we're clearing the air, is your friend Richard Dalton working with you on your new business venture? The one that's mysteriously identical to mine? His silence was all the confirmation I needed. That's what I thought. Congratulations, Michael. You've graduated from being Mother's golden child to actively trying to destroy what I've built. It's not like that, he protested. Then what's it like? I demanded. Explain it to me. But before he could answer, Mother appeared, her face tight with annoyance. There you are. What's so important that you're both missing dessert? We're celebrating. Remember? Michael and I stared at each other. Years of unspoken resentment hanging between us. Without another word, I walked past them both, heading for my car. I had a company to save, and for once, the Walker family drama would have to wait. The drive back to the city took 2 hours and 43 minutes. I spent every minute on the phone with Jake, planning our defense against the takeover attempt. By the time I reached our downtown office, it was nearly 11 at night, but the lights were on, and our core team was waiting. Richard Dalton's silent partner, Jake said without preamble as I walked in. We found him. He slid a folder across the conference table. Inside was a corporate filing for MDW Ventures. I didn't need to ask what the initials stood for. Michael Daniel Walker. How much has he invested? I asked, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Allison, our CFO, spoke up. Based on the capital flow we've traced, approximately $2.2 million. Where would Michael get that kind of money? Jake wondered. I thought of the vintage Corvette, worth at least $150,000. Family money. Our mother would sell her soul to see Michael succeed, especially at my expense. Gibson, Allison said gently, are you sure this isn't just a coincidence? Maybe your brother doesn't know what Richard is doing. He knows, I said flatly, remembering the look on Michael's face at the reunion. The question is how much he knows, and whether our mother is involved directly, or just providing the funding. We need to focus on the board meeting. Jake redirected. Harper needs 7 votes to block your CEO appointment. We've confirmed 4 solid votes in your favor, 3 likely against, and 2 undecided. I nodded, pushing thoughts of my family aside. Let's get to work on those undecided votes and prepare for the worst. We worked through the night, calling in favors, preparing presentations, and building our case for why I should become CEO. Around 3 in the morning, my phone lit up with a text from Aunt Tessa. "Your mother is saying you left because you couldn't handle the family comparison." I set her straight. "Call me tomorrow." I smiled grimly. At least one person in my family was in my corner. By morning, we had a solid strategy. I sent the team home to rest before the Monday meeting, while I stayed behind to refine my presentation. As I was reviewing our company's growth projections, my phone rang. Michael. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. Finally, I answered. "What? Where are you?" he demanded. "Mom's furious that you left." Without saying goodbye, "I had a work emergency." "Right," he scoffed. "The marketing job. Drop the act, Michael. I know about MDW Ventures funding Richard Dalton's attempt to take over my company." Silence filled the line for several seconds. "It's not what you think," he finally said. "Then enlighten me. Can we meet?" "In person? I'm busy trying to save my company from your friend." Michael sighed heavily. "That's what I'm trying to talk to you about. Richard's not doing what he promised. Things have gotten complicated. Despite my better judgment, curiosity won out." "Fine. The coffee shop on 8th and Grant. 1 hour. I'll be there," Michael promised. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, exhaustion washing over me. 8 years of building this company, keeping it separate from my family's dysfunction, all potentially undone, because I couldn't resist coming to one family reunion. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived. Michael was already there, sitting in a corner booth, 2 cups on the table. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Black. 3 sugars," he said, pushing 1 cup toward me as I sat down. "You still take it that way?" I nodded. Surprised he remembered. "I didn't know it was your company," Michael began. "Not at first. Richard approached me about investing in a promising tech startup, said it was undervalued, and we could make a killing by acquiring it and restructuring. And you just happened to choose my company out of thousands of possibilities?" Michael had the grace to look ashamed. When I found out, I confronted Richard. He said it was just business, nothing personal. By then, I was already invested. "How much did Mother put in?" He looked up sharply. "Mom doesn't know anything about this." "The money came from selling my condo and liquidating my savings." This surprised me. "But at dinner, you said you had family investment for your new business. That's a different venture. Mom's funding that one to the tune of $300,000. The platform idea I mentioned is legitimate, though obviously now I realize it's similar to what your company does." I studied my brother's face, trying to determine if he was lying. "So you're telling me you have no idea that Richard is attempting a hostile takeover that would specifically remove me from my position?" Michael paled. "What?" "No. He said the investment was to gain board seats and influence, not to push anyone out." "Well," he lied. "The board votes tomorrow on my CEO appointment. Richard has been campaigning against me, using our internal strategy document that was mysteriously leaked to him. Gibson, I swear, I had nothing to do with that," Michael insisted. "Richard told me this was a passive investment opportunity." I wanted to believe him. After 30 years of living in his shadow, of being the second best son, I wanted to believe that my own brother wouldn't deliberately try to destroy the one thing I'd built for myself. "Even if that's true," I said, "your money is still funding his takeover attempt. And if it succeeds, I lose control of my company." Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from childhood, as a sign of his genuine distress. "What can I do? How do I fix this?" The sincerity in his voice gave me pause. "Why would you want to? You've been competing with me your entire life." "No, Gibson. You've been competing with me. I've just been trying to live up to Mom's impossible expectations." He leaned forward. Do you have any idea what it's like being her favorite? The pressure never stops. Nothing is ever good enough. Every failure feels like the end of the world. Because failure isn't an option for the golden child. Poor you, I said, but without the bite I'd intended. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm trying to explain why I would never deliberately sabotage you. You're the only person in the family who's ever treated me like a real person, not a trophy. I considered his words, remembering moments from our childhood when Michael had stood up for me, shared his toys, helped me with homework. Before Mother's favoritism had driven a wedge between us. If you're serious about fixing this, I said finally, I need everything you have on Richard's plan. Emails, documents, meetings, everything. Michael nodded eagerly. Done. And I'll confront him directly. Make him back off. No, I said sharply. Don't tip him off. I need the element of surprise for the board meeting. We spent the next hour formulating a plan. Michael gave me access to his emails with Richard, revealing details of the takeover strategy I hadn't known. With this new information, I could potentially counter their moves. As we were leaving, Michael hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. Richard has been meeting with Mom. My blood ran cold. About what? I don't know. But they've met at least twice in the past month. I only know because I saw his car at her house when I stopped by unannounced. The pieces fell into place. Richard, Michael, Mother. All connected in ways I was only beginning to understand, and all somehow focused on Walker Tech Solutions, my company, my life's work. Thanks for the warning, I said. And Michael, if you're playing me, if this is some elaborate setup, it's not, he assured me. For once in our lives, let's be brothers instead of rivals. I nodded cautiously, wanting to believe him, but trained by a lifetime of disappointment to keep my guard up. As I watched him walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow's board meeting would change everything. Not just for my company, but for my family as well. Back at the office, I briefed Jake on my conversation with Michael. You believe him? Jake asked skeptically. I don't know. But the information he provided checks out. Richard has been more strategic than we realized. If your brother is telling the truth, we might have a chance, Jake admitted. But if this is another manipulation, then we'll deal with that too, I said firmly. I didn't build this company to let anyone take it away from me, especially not my family. As Sunday turned to Monday, I found myself standing at the window of our office, watching the city lights and thinking about the toolbox Mother had given me. Start fixing your life, she'd said with that condescending smirk. Little did she know, I'd been building something far stronger than she could imagine, piece by piece, year after year. Tomorrow, one way or another, she'd finally learn the truth. The second best son was about to step into the spotlight. The Walker Tech Solutions boardroom felt smaller than usual, with all 14 people crammed around the table. 9 board members, Jake, our legal counsel, Harper and his team, and me. Richard Dalton sat next to Harper, looking confident and relaxed. He nodded politely when I entered, as if we were meeting for a friendly lunch rather than a corporate showdown. Shall we begin? Margaret Fielding, our board chair, called the meeting to order. We have 2 main agenda items today. First, the CEO appointment, and second, the strategic direction for the next fiscal year. I kept my expression neutral as she continued. As you know, Gibson Walker has been serving as acting CEO since Philip's retirement 3 months ago. The board must now vote on whether to make that appointment permanent or to consider other candidates. Harper cleared his throat. Madam Chair, if I may, I believe the board should consider alternative leadership before making this decision. On what grounds? Jake asked sharply. Harper smiled thinly. On the grounds that Walker Tech Solutions needs experienced leadership to navigate its next growth phase. While Mr. Walker has done an admirable job as a founder. The company has reached a size and complexity that requires different skills. And you believe you have those skills, Mr. Harper? Margaret asked. I believe I should be considered. Yes. My track record at Pinnacle Systems speaks for itself. Margaret turned to me. Mr. Walker, your response? I opened the folder in front of me and distributed copies of my presentation. Board members, I've prepared a comprehensive review of our performance during my tenure as acting CEO, along with a strategic plan for the next 3 years. For the next 45 minutes, I walked them through the document, highlighting our 23% revenue growth, client retention improvements, and new market expansions. I outlined my vision for the company's future, including the strategic partnerships I'd begun developing. When I finished, the room was quiet. Even Harper looked thoughtful. Thank you, Mr. Walker, Margaret said. Mr. Harper, your presentation? Harper stood, looking confident. Board members, while Mr. Walker's achievements are commendable, I believe Walker Tech Solutions needs a bolder vision. He launched into his own presentation, much of which seemed suspiciously similar to our leaked strategy document. I watched the board members' reactions carefully, noting who seemed impressed and who appeared skeptical. Furthermore, Harper continued, I have secured commitments from additional investors who are prepared to inject $30 million into the company upon my appointment as CEO. Richard Dalton nodded in confirmation. My firm is prepared to lead that investment round. That's very interesting, I said, speaking up for the first time since my presentation, especially considering the source of that investment. Harper frowned. I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. Walker. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I distributed another document to the board. This is the corporate filing for MDW Ventures, the primary funding source behind Mr. Dalton's investment firm. MDW stands for Michael Daniel Walker, my brother. Murmurs rippled around the table. Further, I continued, I have evidence that Mr. Dalton and my brother have been working together to orchestrate this takeover attempt, potentially with the involvement of my mother, Patricia Walker. Richard's composed facade cracked slightly. That's absurd. Your family connections have nothing to do with this business decision. Then, perhaps you can explain these emails, I said, distributing another set of documents. Specifically, the ones where you discuss how to, quote, remove Gibson from the equation, and restructure the company without founder interference. The board members leafed through the papers with increasing interest. Where did you get these? Richard demanded. From my brother, I replied calmly, who, it seems, had second thoughts about your plan. Once he realized the full extent of it, Harper leaned over to whisper urgently to Richard, who had gone pale. Margaret Fielding cleared her throat. Mr. Dalton, is this accurate? Has your investment strategy been specifically targeted at removing Mr. Walker from his position? Richard attempted to regain his composure. Business is business, Madam Chair. Companies outgrow their founders all the time. That doesn't answer the question, Margaret pressed. The emails are being taken out of context, Richard insisted. I don't think they are, came a voice from the doorway. Michael stood there, looking uncharacteristically serious in a business suit. Mr. Walker, this is a closed board meeting, Margaret began. I apologize for the interruption, Michael said, but as the primary investor in MDW Ventures, I believe I have relevant information for this board. Harper stood up. This is highly irregular. So is corporate espionage, Michael countered. Richard, tell them about the strategy document. Tell them how you obtained it. The room went silent as all eyes turned to Richard Dalton, whose confidence had visibly crumbled. I don't know what he's talking about, Richard tried, but his voice lacked conviction. Let me refresh your memory, Michael said. 3 weeks ago, at the Madison Club, you met with someone who provided you with internal documents from Walker Tech Solutions. Someone who has a personal interest in seeing Gibson fail. My chest tightened as I realized what Michael was saying. "Mother," I said softly. Michael nodded grimly. "I'm sorry, Gibson. I only confirmed it yesterday. She's been feeding Richard information for months, hoping to replace you with a real businessman, as she put it." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My own mother had been actively working to destroy my company. The depth of her disdain was even greater than I'd imagined. "This is a family matter," Richard said dismissively, trying to regain control of the situation. "It has no bearing on the business decision before this board." "I think it has every bearing," Margaret Fielding replied. "If these allegations of corporate espionage and conflict of interest are true, they cast serious doubt on the integrity of your investment offer and Mr. Harper's candidacy." "Madam Chair," I said, "there's one more piece of information the board should be aware of before voting." I took a deep breath. Walker Tech Solutions has a unique corporate structure. While we've accepted outside investment for 20% of the company, the remaining 80% is held in a voting trust with only 2 beneficiaries: myself and Jake Thompson. We each control 40% of the company. Shocked expressions appeared around the table, most notably on Richard's and Harper's faces. "What are you saying, Mr. Walker?" Margaret asked. "I'm saying that regardless of today's vote, Jake and I retain controlling interest in Walker Tech Solutions. We've allowed the board significant input into company operations out of respect for your expertise, but legally, we cannot be removed from our positions without our consent." Harper slammed his portfolio shut. "This is outrageous. Why wasn't this disclosed to potential investors? It's clearly stated in the corporate charter." Our legal counsel spoke up. Page 37, Section 4, Paragraph 2. "All investors receive this document during due diligence." Richard Dalton stood abruptly. "This meeting is a farce. You never intended to consider alternative leadership." "On the contrary," I replied calmly. "I value this board's input enormously, but I also built safeguards into this company specifically to prevent hostile takeovers. Given today's revelations, I believe that was a wise precaution." Margaret Fielding surveyed the room before speaking. "In light of this information, I suggest we proceed with our vote on the CEO appointment. All those in favor of appointing Gibson Walker as permanent CEO of Walker Tech Solutions?" 7 hands went up immediately. After a moment's hesitation, an 8th joined them. Richard and Harper watched in stony silence. "The motion carries," Margaret announced. "Congratulations, Mr. Walker." As the meeting adjourned, board members filed out, some stopping to congratulate me, others deep in conversation about the dramatic revelations. Richard and Harper left without a word, their takeover attempt decisively defeated. Michael remained by the door, uncertainty on his face. "I didn't know if you'd want me here, but I thought you might need backup." "How did you find out about Mother's involvement?" I asked. "I searched her study last night after you and I talked. Found her meeting notes with Richard. She's been feeding him information for months, Gibson. Anything she could get about your company." The betrayal cut deep, but I wasn't entirely surprised. "Thank you for coming forward." Michael nodded. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built here. It's incredible." Jake approached, extending his hand to Michael. "So you're the infamous brother. Thanks for the assist today. Least I could do after unknowingly funding an attack on my brother's company," Michael replied. As they talked, I gazed around the boardroom, processing the morning's events. In 48 hours, I'd gone from humiliated son to confirmed CEO, from second after Michael to leader of a successful tech company. The victory felt substantial, but incomplete. There was still one confrontation waiting for me back at the family reunion, one final reckoning with the woman who had spent a lifetime ensuring I knew my place, and who had finally taken concrete action to enforce it in my professional life. "Jake, handle the press release and staff announcement," I said. "I need to tie up one loose end." "Your mother?" Jake guessed. "Family business," I confirmed. Michael met my eyes across the room. "Want company for that conversation?" For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I felt genuine solidarity with my brother. Actually, I think I do. Together, we left the boardroom, heading back to the family reunion where Mother would be holding court, blissfully unaware that her carefully constructed hierarchy was about to come crashing down around her. The family reunion was still in full swing when Michael and I arrived. Mother had extended the gathering an extra day for her birthday, ensuring maximum attendance for her reign as family matriarch. Aunt Tessa spotted us first, her eyebrows rising at the sight of Michael and me arriving together, both in business suits. "Well, well," she said, approaching. "The prodigal son's return. Together. No less." "Where's Mom?" Michael asked. Aunt Tessa gestured toward the gazebo where Mother sat surrounded by admirers, holding court as she opened birthday presents. "Queen Patricia is receiving tribute from her subjects." "Tessa," I said quietly, "what I'm about to do isn't going to be pretty. You might want to keep the kids away from the gazebo for a while." She studied my face. "That's serious, huh? Should I be concerned?" "Not for me," I assured her. "I'm done being concerned about what Patricia Walker thinks." Michael and I made our way across the lawn, turning heads with our formal attire and serious expressions. Conversations quieted as we passed. By the time we reached the gazebo, a curious hush had fallen over that section of the gathering. "Gibson! Michael!" Mother exclaimed with false brightness. "You've returned just in time for the cake. Though I must say, you're terribly overdressed for a casual family gathering." "We need to talk," I said, privately. Mother waved dismissively. "Whatever it is can wait. Gibson, we're celebrating." "No," I replied firmly. "It can't wait." Something in my tone made her pause. She looked from me to Michael, noting our unified front with a slight frown. "Very well," she sighed dramatically, rising from her chair. "Excuse me, everyone. It seems my sons require a moment of my time. Don't touch the cake until I return." We led her to the same garden shed where I'd taken Jake's call 2 days earlier. Once we were out of earshot of the other guests, Mother's demeanor changed instantly. "What is the meaning of this?" "Gibson, I don't appreciate you dragging me away from my own birthday celebration to satisfy whatever grievance you've invented now." "Richard Dalton," I said simply. Her expression flickered briefly before settling into practiced innocence. "Michael's friend from business school? What about him?" "Stop it, Mom," Michael interrupted. "I found your meeting notes. We know you've been feeding him information about Gibson's company." Mother's facade cracked slightly. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Walker Tech Solutions," I said. "My company. The one you've been trying to help Richard take over, so that I could be replaced by someone you consider a real businessman." For a moment, she seemed genuinely confused. Then understanding dawned in her eyes. "Your company? That little marketing firm you work for?" "I don't work for a marketing firm, Mother. I never have. I co-founded Walker Tech Solutions 8 years ago. We have 3,000 clients, annual revenue of $67 million. And, as of 2 hours ago, I've been officially appointed CEO." Mother looked to Michael as if expecting him to contradict me. When he didn't, she laughed nervously. "This is absurd. You expect me to believe that you, Gibson, built a multi-million-dollar company without anyone knowing?" "I knew," Michael said quietly. "Not the details, but I knew Gibson was successful. That's why Richard approached me about investing. He knew too. And so did you," I added, "once Richard told you. Which is why you started feeding him information, trying to help him take control from me." Mother's expression hardened. "You're making wild accusations based on nothing." I pulled out my phone and played a voice recording. "Patricia, this is Richard. Got the documents you sent. This is exactly what we needed. Harper's preparing his presentation now. Once Gibson's out, we'll make sure Michael's new venture gets priority treatment from the company's resources." Mother's face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" Richard's office voicemail, Michael said. Turns out his assistant is dating one of Gibson's employees. Small world. So it was all a setup, I said, the pieces finally falling into place completely. You were using Richard to take over my company so you could redirect its resources to Michael's new venture. I was protecting this family's interests, Mother snapped, dropping all pretense. Michael has real business potential. He deserves resources and support, and I don't, I asked. I built a company from nothing into a major success. And your response is to try to take it away from me? You got lucky, she dismissed. Michael has genuine talent. He just needs the right opportunity. Michael stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Stop it, Mom. Just stop. Do you even hear yourself? Gibson has accomplished something extraordinary, and all you can do is try to tear him down and give the credit to me. Mother turned to him, genuinely shocked. Michael, I'm only thinking of your future. Your new business needs capital and infrastructure. Gibson's company has both. My company, Michael corrected. Mine. Not something you set up for me, not something you can claim credit for. I want to succeed or fail on my own terms. This is Gibson's influence, Mother accused. He's always been jealous of our special bond. I laughed, a genuine sound of disbelief. Special bond? You've manipulated him his entire life to be your trophy, your validation. You don't love Michael for who he is. You love what his success says about you. How dare you? She hissed. He's right, Michael said quietly. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to your expectations. Do you know how exhausting that is? To never be allowed to fail? To always feel like your love is conditional on my next achievement? Mother's eyes welled with tears. That's not true. I've always supported you. No, Michael replied. You've always pushed me. There's a difference. And you've always undermined Gibson, he continued. The name tags, the public humiliation, the constant comparisons. And now corporate espionage. Do you hate him that much? Mother turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I don't hate you, Gibson. I never have. Then why? I asked, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. Why have you spent my entire life making me feel like I wasn't good enough? She sat heavily on a garden bench, suddenly looking every bit of her 60 years. You remind me of him. Dad? I asked. She nodded. Not just in looks, though there's that too. It's your independence, your refusal to need me. Thomas was the same way. Self-sufficient, to the point of making me feel irrelevant. So you punished me for it, I said. By making sure I knew I was second best. I didn't mean to, she whispered. It just happened. Michael needed me. You didn't. Or at least that's how it felt. Michael and I exchanged glances. Decades of family dynamics, suddenly cast in a new light. Neither of us knew quite what to say. The board voted me in as CEO, I finally said. Your plan with Richard failed. Harper's been removed from consideration. Mother nodded slightly, still lost in her own thoughts. You really built a successful company? Without any help from family connections? He really did, Mom, Michael confirmed. It's incredible what Gibson has accomplished. She looked up at me, and for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I saw something like respect in her eyes. I never thought. I always assumed. You never asked, I said simply. Not once in 8 years did you ask me about my work, my goals, my dreams. You were too busy pushing Michael toward your vision of success. Mother turned to Michael. Is that true? Did I push too hard? He sat beside her, taking her hand. You pushed because you wanted the best for me. But Mom, you never stopped to ask if your version of the best was what I actually wanted. As they talked, I stepped back, watching this unexpected moment of honesty between them. After 30 years of favoritism and manipulation, it felt strange to see Mother actually listening to criticism, actually considering the damage her actions had caused. Aunt Tessa appeared at my side. "Everything okay here?" "Not yet," I said. "But maybe someday." "I heard you became CEO today," she said quietly. "Your grandfather would have been so proud." "How did you know?" She smiled. "I've been investing in Walker Tech Solutions for 3 years. Did you think I wouldn't recognize my own nephew's company name in my investment portfolio?" I stared at her in shock. "You're one of our angel investors?" $50,000 initial investment, she confirmed. Now worth considerably more. "I always knew you had it in you, Gibson." As we talked, I noticed Mother watching us with an unreadable expression. Jealousy? Regret? I couldn't tell. But something had shifted in our family dynamic. Something fundamental and irreversible. The carefully constructed hierarchy had been upended, and none of us knew quite where we stood now. "I should go make an announcement," I said finally. "Let everyone know about my appointment." "They'll be shocked," Aunt Tessa said with a mischievous smile. "That's the idea," I replied. As I walked back toward the main gathering, Michael caught up with me. "Gibson, wait. What happens now? With us, I mean." I considered the question carefully. "I don't know, Michael. We have a lot of history to work through. I want to try," he said simply, "to be brothers. Real brothers. Without all of Mom's baggage between us." For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that might be possible. I'd like that. Together, we returned to the reunion, where I would finally step out of the shadow of being second after Michael and into the light of who I truly was. Gibson Walker, CEO, and perhaps, someday, simply brother and son without the qualifiers that had defined me for so long. The family's reaction to my announcement was everything I'd secretly dreamed of for years. Shock, disbelief, followed by awkward congratulations and a flurry of questions I answered with calm confidence. Uncle Frank actually choked on his drink when I mentioned our company valuation. Cousins, who had barely spoken to me all weekend, suddenly found me fascinating. Through it all, Mother sat quietly at the edge of the gathering, watching, not participating, not contradicting, just observing with an expression I couldn't quite read. Occasionally, she would make eye contact with me, then quickly look away, as if seeing me clearly for the first time was too intense to bear for long. As the afternoon wore on, family members began to depart, the extended reunion finally drawing to a close. I helped Aunt Tessa load her luggage into her car, grateful for her steady presence throughout the tumultuous weekend. "You know," she said, closing the trunk, "your mother wasn't always like this." "I find that hard to believe." Aunt Tessa leaned against the car. When she and Thomas first got married, Patricia was different. Softer. More vulnerable. Then her father started comparing Thomas unfavorably to his other sons-in-law. "Why can't you be more like George? He just made partner at the law firm. Why can't you be more like William? He just bought Betty a new house." I listened, intrigued by this glimpse into my mother's past. "Your father couldn't take the constant criticism. He started working longer hours, coming home less and less. Eventually, he left completely. And Patricia. She became her father. The very thing that drove her husband away, she became. That doesn't excuse what she did to me," I said. "No," Aunt Tessa agreed. "It doesn't. But understanding where it comes from might help you decide what kind of relationship you want with her going forward, if any." She hugged me tightly before getting into her car. "I'm proud of you, Gibson. Not just for your success, but for the way you've handled yourself through all of this. With dignity." After she drove away, I wandered to the far end of the property, finding a quiet spot overlooking the lake. The toolbox Mother had given me sat on the ground beside me, a symbol of her disdain that now seemed almost comical given the day's revelations. "May I join you?" I turned to find Mother standing a few feet away, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. It's a free country, I replied, neither welcoming nor rejecting her. She sat carefully on the bench beside me, maintaining a respectful distance. For several minutes, we simply watched the sunset, reflecting off the water. I spoke with Richard, she finally said. He confirmed everything. The takeover attempt, using Michael's investment, the leaked documents, all of it. I said nothing, waiting. I want you to know, she continued, that Michael truly didn't understand what was happening. Richard misled him completely. I know, I said. Michael and I have talked. Mother nodded, then gestured to the toolbox. It belonged to your grandfather. I know that too. What you may not know is that he specifically wanted you to have it. In his will, he left Michael his watch collection, and you. This toolbox. I withheld it, until now. I turned to look at her directly. Why give it to me like that? As an insult? She flinched slightly. I told myself it was tough love, that you needed motivation to be more ambitious. Like Michael. Yes, she admitted softly. Like Michael. Or at least, like the version of Michael I thought I wanted. The version that doesn't actually exist, I pointed out. The perfect son who never fails, never struggles, never needs help. I'm beginning to understand that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Michael said some things today. About the pressure I've put on him. Things I need to think about. She paused, gathering herself. There's something else you should know. About your father. My heart rate quickened. What about him? He didn't abandon us. Not exactly. She stared at her hands. After he left, he tried to maintain a relationship with you and Michael. I prevented it. The admission hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, you prevented it? I returned his letters, blocked his calls, told him the boys didn't want to see him when he tried to arrange visits. You had no right, I said, anger rising in my throat. I know that now, she replied, tears forming in her eyes. I was hurt and angry, and wanted to hurt him back. By the time I realized how wrong I was, he'd given up trying. Moved to Seattle. Started a new family. Does Michael know this? She shook her head. I haven't told him yet. I wanted to tell you first. Because. Her voice broke. Because you suffered more from his absence. Michael had me, at least, flawed as I am. You had no one. I had grandfather, I said. And Aunt Tessa. Yes, she acknowledged. Thank God for them. We sat in silence again, the weight of decades of misunderstanding and hurt hanging between us. I found something else in the toolbox, I said finally, besides the loan documents. I reached inside and pulled out a small weathered notebook, grandfather's project journal. He documented everything he built, from birdhouses to the gazebo out there. And in the back, I flipped to the final pages, where a child's awkward handwriting recorded measurements and materials for a simple toolbox. You made that toolbox with him, Mother said, surprise evident in her voice. I never knew. The summer before he died. While Michael was at football camp and you were busy with your charity work, Grandfather taught me how to use every tool in this box. How to measure twice and cut once. How to fix things that were broken. Mother touched the journal gently. He always said you had a builder's mind. Not just buildings. Businesses too, as it turns out. She smiled faintly. Apparently so. You know what the irony is? I continued. This toolbox you gave me to fix my life is actually the perfect symbol for what I've already done. I built something from nothing, piece by piece, just like Grandfather taught me. Mother was quiet for a long moment. I've made terrible mistakes, Gibson. With both you and Michael. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope it's not too late to at least understand each other better. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from her. Not nearly enough to heal the wounds of 30 years, but perhaps enough to begin a different kind of relationship. Your father lives in Seattle, she said, pulling a slip of paper from her pocket. This is his address and phone number. I've had it all along. You should contact him if you want to. I took the paper, emotions churning. Another bombshell in a weekend full of them. Thank you, I said simply. As the last light faded from the sky, Mother stood to leave. Congratulations on your CEO appointment, Gibson. It's well-deserved. How do you know? I asked. You know nothing about my company, or how I run it. She smiled sadly. I'm learning that there's a lot about you I don't know. Perhaps, if you're willing, that could change. She walked away, leaving me with the toolbox, the journal, and my father's contact information. 3 pieces of a past I'd thought was fixed and unchangeable, but which now seemed fluid and open to reinterpretation. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Headed back to the city. Dinner tomorrow? There's someone I think you should meet. I replied. Your office. Noon. Bring lunch. As I gathered my things to leave, I took one last look at the family property. The site of so many difficult memories and now, unexpectedly, a turning point. The name tag that had started it all, second after Michael, was still in my pocket. I took it out, looked at it for a long moment, then dropped it into the lake, watching as it floated briefly before sinking out of sight. Some labels aren't meant to be carried forever. The CEO announcement made the business pages the following morning. Walker Tech Solutions. Names co-founder Gibson Walker. As chief executive ran the headline in the financial section. Jake had arranged for a professional photo, me looking confident and capable in front of our company logo. A far cry from the second-best son my mother had dismissed for so many years. My assistant had filled my calendar with congratulatory calls and meetings, but I'd blocked out the lunch hour for Michael. At precisely 12, he arrived at my office, carrying 2 bags from Moretti's, our childhood favorite deli, pastrami on rye. Extra mustard. No tomato, he said, setting one bag on my desk. Some things never change. I smiled, remembering our rare good moments growing up, when we'd sneak off to Moretti's together, away from Mother's watchful eye. Thanks for meeting me, Michael said, taking in my office with obvious admiration. This place is impressive. 8 years of 70-hour weeks will get you a nice office, I replied, unwrapping my sandwich. About that, Michael shifted uncomfortably. I owe you an apology. A big one. I should have known what Richard was doing. Should have asked more questions about the investment. You didn't know it was my company, I reminded him. That's not the point. I let myself be used as a weapon against you, even unknowingly. He met my eyes directly. I'm sorry, Gibson. Truly. The sincerity in his voice was impossible to miss. I believe you. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the awkwardness gradually fading. So, I said finally. You mentioned someone you wanted me to meet? Michael nodded. Heather's downstairs. I asked her to give us a few minutes first. He took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you before I bring her up. You're not getting cold feet about the wedding, are you? I asked, only half joking. Quite the opposite. Michael smiled. We're expecting. Heather's pregnant. 4 months along. Congratulations, I said, genuinely happy for him. That's wonderful news. Thanks. We're excited. He hesitated. There's more. I'm leaving the business world. This surprised me. What? I'm going back to school. To get my teaching credential. I stared at him. Teaching? You? Michael laughed at my expression. I know, shocking, right? The golden child abandoning the path to corporate glory. What does Mother think about this? His smile faded slightly. She doesn't know yet. After everything that happened this weekend, I needed some time before having that conversation. She'll be disappointed, I said. Probably, Michael agreed. But for the first time in my life, I don't really care. This is what I want, Gibson. I've always loved working with kids, coaching youth sports. I should have done this years ago instead of trying to force myself into the businessman mold. Mother's going to blame me for this, I said, corrupting her golden child. Let her. I'm done living my life to please her. He leaned forward. You were right about so many things. The way she pitted us against each other. The impossible expectations. I'm ready to break free of all that. For my child's sake, if not my own. The revelation of Michael's planned career change felt significant. A real break from Mother's influence, in a way that went beyond words. I'm proud of you, I said, surprising both of us with the statement. Michael blinked. Really? Really? It takes courage to change direction, especially when everyone expects you to continue on the same path. He smiled, relief evident on his face. That means a lot. Coming from you. So when do I get to meet the mother-to-be? I asked, changing the subject before things got too emotional. Michael texted Heather to come up. And a few minutes later, she joined us. Her pregnancy was just beginning to show. A small bump, visible under her flowing top. Congratulations on the CEO position, she said, shaking my hand. Michael's been telling me all about your company. It sounds amazing. Thank you. And congratulations on the baby. That's much more important than any business achievement. She smiled warmly. We think so too. Over the next hour, the three of us talked easily about the future. The baby, Michael's teaching plans, my company's expansion. For the first time I could remember, there was no competition between Michael and me. No underlying tension or resentment. Just two brothers and a soon-to-be sister-in-law, sharing a meal and making plans. There's one more thing, Michael said, as they were preparing to leave. We want you to be the baby's godfather. I felt a lump form in my throat. Are you sure? Absolutely sure, Heather answered. There's no one better qualified to teach our child about perseverance and integrity. After they left, I sat at my desk for a long time, processing the changes of the past 72 hours. From humiliated son to respected CEO, from family outcast to godfather-to-be, from second after Michael to simply Gibson, a man defined by his own achievements rather than his place in the family hierarchy. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. A Seattle area code. With a jolt, I realized it might be my father. Mother had given me his contact information, but I hadn't yet worked up the courage to use it. I answered cautiously. Hello? Gibson Walker? A man's voice, older but with a familiar cadence that stirred distant memories. Yes, this is Thomas Walker. Your father. He cleared his throat nervously. Patricia called me yesterday. Said you might want to talk. My mother had called him first? That was unexpected. She did? She told me about your company. Said you'd been made CEO. That's incredible, son. Son. The word hung in the air, fraught with 30 years of absence and questions. Thank you, I managed. I know this is out of the blue, he continued. And I know I have no right to expect anything from you. But I wanted you to know. I never stopped thinking about you and Michael. Never stopped caring. Mother told me she kept your letters from us, I said. That she blocked your attempts to stay in contact. He sighed heavily. That's true. But I should have tried harder. Found another way. I let my anger at her affect my responsibility to you boys, and that's something I'll always regret. His honesty was disarming. No excuses. No shifting blame. Just acknowledgement of his failure and regret. I have a family here in Seattle, he said. A wife, 2 teenage daughters. Your half-sisters. They know about you and Michael. They've always known. And they've always wanted to meet their big brothers. The idea of having sisters was another shock in a weekend full of them. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, he assured me. Just know that whenever you're ready, If you're ever ready, we're here. All of us. After we hung up, I sat in silence, overwhelmed by the possibilities suddenly opening before me. New relationships to explore. Old wounds beginning to heal. A family expanding beyond the narrow confines Mother had established. The toolbox sat on the credenza behind my desk. I'd brought it to the office, intending to keep it as a reminder of how far I'd come. Now I opened it, running my fingers over the tools inside. My grandfather's tools. The ones he'd used to teach me that broken things could be fixed, that something valuable could be built from raw materials and patience. Perhaps families could be rebuilt too, with the right tools and enough time. Jake knocked on my door, breaking my reverie. Board's waiting for your first official meeting as CEO. Ready to dazzle them? I smiled, closing the toolbox. Absolutely. As I gathered my materials for the meeting, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. The pain of being deemed second best had driven me to prove my worth, to build something meaningful and lasting. But it had also isolated me from my family, kept me apart from potential connections and support. Now I had a chance to integrate these separate parts of my life. To be both the successful CEO and the brother, son, and soon-to-be godfather. To define myself by my whole life, not just my reaction to childhood wounds. Start fixing your life, Mother had said mockingly. As she handed me the toolbox, she hadn't realized I'd been doing exactly that for years, building a foundation strong enough to withstand any storm, including the ones she created. 2 days after the family reunion, I was officially CEO of Walker Tech Solutions. But more importantly, I was finally free of the label that had followed me since childhood. No longer second after Michael, but simply Gibson Walker. A man who had built something valuable, not just with his hands or his mind, but with his heart. And that, I realized as I walked into the boardroom to lead my first meeting as CEO, was a victory far sweeter than any business success could ever be. Have you ever felt underestimated or compared unfavorably to someone else in your life? How did you respond? Was it by proving yourself like Gibson, or did you take a different approach? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need to hear that being underestimated can sometimes be your greatest motivation. Thank you for listening, and remember, the labels others give us don't define who we truly are or what we can achieve.